Lately, Obama's been trying to dip his toe into the 2020 Democratic primary for a little while now. Mostly, all he has to say in between giving his paid speeches to Wall Street is basically just concern trolling the left and the progressives in the Democratic Party, warning them not to get too crazy and too radical, supporting policies like a single-payer healthcare system, Medicare for all, or living wage, or ending the wars. Don't get too crazy and support actual left-wing positions. But now he's sending warning shots. Really, it's a threat that if he believes Bernie Sanders has a chance of winning the nomination, he's going to step in to make sure that doesn't happen. There are a couple of things I want to say about this, but let's be clear about what this is. This isn't Obama saying he's going to take slights and jabs at Bernie Sanders when he's giving speeches when he's giving speeches at fundraisers or lobbyist groups or whatever it is. We know it's more than that. This is a threat from Barack Obama and the leadership of the establishment of the Democratic Party, saying if we let this primary play out and Bernie Sanders actually starts to get some traction and he's winning a bunch of states and he's leading in the delegate count, we're going to intervene and we're going to do everything in our power to go against the will of the voters in this Democratic primary, ironically in an anti-democratic fashion, using every dirty trick imaginable, like coordinating smears and hit pieces with our friends in the mainstream media, or flat out voter suppression by trying to force closed primaries, or kicking hundreds of thousands of people off of the voter rolls so they can't vote in the primary for Bernie. Or we'll even flat out change the vote count like Debbie Wasserman Schultz in her congressional race against Tim Canova. We'll do whatever it takes to make sure that at the end of the day, the person who wins the Democratic nomination is going to be beholden to the big donors of the Democratic Party, the corporate donors, the millionaires, the billionaires, and they're also going to be committed to continuing the status quo of neoliberal corporatism and imperialist neocon foreign policy. This is why it's so incredibly important that we never forget what we learned from WikiLeaks and those DNC email leaks and the Podesta email leaks. What we learned about how corrupt the Democratic Party is and how they will resort to dirty, sleazy, unethical, possibly illegal, ironically undemocratic actions to make sure that the progressive, populist, social democratic left never takes control of the party, so that the status quo will continue unabated. These are the same people, the same actors involved who rigged the very last Democratic primary. And I find it stunning that everybody has just let them off the hook for that. You have people like Barack Obama, who was caught red-handed committing election fraud on the largest scale in the history of the United States, conspiring with some of the most powerful media organizations in the world, conspiring with one of the candidates in the race, as well as the independent state Democratic parties, to rig the primary against Bernie Sanders to prop up the establishment candidate. That guy is issuing a threat that we will do it again. We're going to pull out all the stops if it looks like Bernie Sanders is going to win. But everybody is talking about this. They're going about this as if, these are just two political figures representing the two opposing factions in the Democratic Party. Obama representing the establishment, Bernie Sanders representing the progressive populist left, social democratic left. Gonna go toe-to-toe and have a battle of policy ideas and what vision is actually best for the Democratic Party in the country. That's not what this is. This is a person, part of a cabal, who just committed election fraud on the largest scale in the history of the country, threatening to do it again because he got away with it last time. So he's threatening to do it again in the 2020 Democratic primary. That's exactly what this is. Why do you think Obama and the Clintons stepped in at the last minute of the DNC chair race back in 2016. When it looked like Keith Ellison was about to run away with it, Barack Obama had Tom Perez installed for moments just like this. The lefties in the party are getting a little too uppity and try to have a say in the direction the Democratic Party should go in, as well as what policies they should be fighting for. Tom Perez, like the lackey and lapdog he is, has come through for Obama every single time. When the climate activists and the lefties are saying, hey man, climate change is a serious threat, it's arguably the biggest threat we're facing right now, and we have a very limited amount of time to aggressively address the problem before it's too late. Therefore, the Democratic Party, if you're going to be hosting a bunch of debates this primary season, you should at least dedicate one entire debate to the issue of climate change, since it's such an incredibly important issue. Reasonable request, but the establishment of the Democratic Party doesn't want that because, for several reasons. One, it would expose the candidates that they back, like Joe Biden and Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar. It would expose them as being charlatans and inadequate on the issue, and in a Democratic primary in 2020, being weak on the issue of climate change is basically political suicide. So on the other side of the same coin, if you have a debate focused entirely on climate change, Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard, the progressives in the race, are going to show out. Bernie Sanders is going to talk about his Green New Deal that creates 20 million jobs. He's going to talk about his Green New Deal that invests trillions of dollars upgrading our infrastructure across the country, upgrading the roads and the bridges, building high-speed rail systems, retrofitting all the buildings in the United States so that they run on green and renewable energy. Bernie Sanders is going to talk about the $16 trillion that he's going to put into his Green New Deal. Bernie Sanders is also going to talk about nationalizing the energy industry in the United States. And he's going to look like a fucking rock star compared to everyone else. They could put everybody on the goddamn stage, all 20 candidates running. They could put everybody on that goddamn stage, and Bernie Sanders is going to look like a goddamn rock star talking about his Green New Deal. And the same with Tulsi Gabbard talking about her off act. They're going to look better than everyone else on stage, so the DNC can't have that. For that reason, as well as the DNC just simply does not want to buck their donors in the fossil fuel industry, who are these polluters causing climate change. Those donors to the Democratic Party definitely don't want a climate change focused debate because the finger is going to be pointed at them. So Tom Perez, like the lackey he is, steps in and says, yeah, we're not going to have a climate focused debate, even though I believe most of the candidates said that they want a climate change debate, even though there was overwhelming grassroots pressure in the Democratic Party from the voters in the Democratic Party. Tom Perez, at the behest of the establishment, denied this request. When there was a huge uproar in the Democratic Party within the DNC, and they actually had a vote to stop taking fossil fuel money, Tom Perez, again, at the behest of the establishment, steps in and says, whoa, cool your jets, everybody. I don't believe in this unilateral disarmament nonsense. Therefore, I'm taking all the money we can get, all the corporate money we can get, even if that means begging money from the people who are responsible for the climate crisis, while we claim to be aggressively fighting the climate crisis. The DCCC blacklisting and basically declaring war on progressives by saying any contractor who does business with progressives challenging incumbent Democrats, you're not going to get any more contracts from the DNC, basically trying to make it so that no contractors will work with progressives challenging incumbent Democrats, and it would make it incredibly hard for them to run an effective campaign if they don't have the resources to do so. So Tom Perez, even though that was the DCCC's decision, you think Tom Perez didn't have a say in that as the DNC chair? Look at how they're conducting the primary already before a single vote is even being casted. When it comes to the debates, they flat out cheated Tulsi Gabbard out of the third debate. So Tom Perez's job as DNC chair, anointed by the party elites like Barack Obama and the Clintons, his job is to beat back the progressive wave, the Bernie Sanders wing of the party that is trying to do a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. His job as DNC chair is to shut him out no matter how unethical and sleazy the tactics he has to use to do it. So, do you really think that after Barack Obama puts that lapdog in place at the DNC to be a gatekeeper of who's allowed to have influence in the Democratic Party, you think that he's going to just let Bernie Sanders cakewalk through the primary and get the Democratic nomination without pulling out all the stops, including all their dirty, unethical, possibly illegal tricks that the Democratic Party likes to use? Come on. And the next thing I want to say is, since leaving the White House, Barack Obama has really, really shown his true colors. And his true colors are that he's incredibly shallow and self-absorbed and arrogant. He's been out of office for almost 3 years now. We all see the insanity that the Trump administration is wreaking on the country and around the world, increasing drone strikes by 430%. The same drone strikes that killed 90% of civilians. Increasing airstrikes. He dropped more bombs in Afghanistan in his first year in office than they had dropped in the entire 16 years of the war that was going on before Donald Trump came in office. The Republicans passed a grotesque, disgusting, absurd, unethical, and corrupt ass giant tax cut for the richest people and corporations in the United States and around the world, really, basically. Giving them trillions of dollars in unnecessary tax cuts, while at the same time raising taxes on anyone who makes less than $75,000 a year to pay for those absurd, unnecessary tax cuts. Scandalous. The reckless environmental pollution, the destruction of the EPA, the appointing people to cabinet positions with the specific expressed goal of destroying those departments and agencies, the rank flat out corruption and influence peddling, the violating the emoluments clause, being bribed by Saudi Arabia to continue this genocide in Yemen, and being bribed by other foreign governments. All these things happening since Barack Obama came out of office. 10 million people losing their health insurance. All of this shit happens, and he has nothing to say about it. He's got nothing to say about it. The only time you ever hear Barack Obama comment on politics is when he's trying to lambast and browbeat the lefties in the party. And moments like this, when he's coming out threatening to rig the primary against Bernie Sanders if it looks like he's going to win. So when people's lives, the lives of the average working class people in this country are being harmed and put in danger by the actions of the Trump administration, Barack Obama has nothing to say. But when there's a chance that a progressive can come in and take control of the Democratic Party, that's when he has to come out and say something about it. Understand the reason why he's doing this is not because this isn't even mostly because Obama thinks Bernie Sanders' policies would be harmful to the country. It's not even that. This is purely to protect the self-interest of Barack Obama and the other elites in the Democratic Party. They know if Bernie Sanders takes control of the party, the gravy train is done. The party isn't taking any more corporate money. We're going to war with the political establishment. We're going to clean house, fire all the Clintonites and the Obama people out of the DNC, replace them with solid lefties fighting for left-wing policies, and we're also going to just flat out ban private money in politics. If Bernie does that, the gravy train is done for the elites in the Democratic Party. All these consultants getting paid six figures to run the party into the ground and provide the shittiest, most terrible strategy to the Democratic Party, they're gone. Barack Obama and his paid speeches, getting paid $400,000 an hour for paid speeches to Wall Street banks, all that shit is done. Because, yeah, some of it is retroactive bribes that he's getting for letting all the bankers off the hook. But also, they're giving him all that money because he still has influence in the Democratic Party. He still can pull strings in the Democratic Party. If Bernie Sanders comes in with a political revolution and runs out all the establishment people out of the DNC, he primaries all the corporate Democrats in Washington. If he does that, Barack Obama has no pull with this new Democratic Party. He has no pull with progressives and leftists and people fighting for single payer, $15 minimum wage, or to end the wars. Barack Obama has no pull with those people. So now his influence dries up, and when the influence dries up, so does the cash. So understand, this is Barack Obama being entirely self-centered and focused on his own financial interests as well as his legacy. Because also, Bernie Sanders comes in and he's going to show people, no, we can actually do this shit. And the reason why we haven't done it up till now is because all the presidents, all of our politicians have been insanely corrupt, and they've been working on behalf of corporations and millionaires and billionaires. That's why Barack Obama didn't do shit the 8 years he was in president. So when the people see that it's not impossible to get single payer, it's not impossible to get a living wage, it's not impossible to end the war, it's not impossible to aggressively fight climate change, then the rest of the country is going to see what I see and what the people in my audience sees, which is that Obama was a shitty president, which is that Obama continued the status quo for 8 years, and he didn't prosecute war criminals, and he didn't end the wars, and he didn't fight for single payer, and he didn't fight for a living wage, and he didn't fight to end the drug war. He didn't do anything that anybody wanted, which brings me to my last and final point. I hope Barack Obama does this. I'll take you up on the challenge, because if he thinks, because there's this, people want to talk about cult of personality. The cult of personality around Barack Obama, biggest that I've seen. There are people who would still say Barack Obama was a good president. He probably didn't get everything that I wanted, but he was still a good president. What do they have to back up that claim? Absolutely nothing. At this point, it comes across, the people who still say Barack Obama was a great president, it's basically, to me, they come across as the same way as religious fundamentalists, whether it's Christian fundamentalists or Muslim fundamentalists. Fundamentalists in any religion are very similar. It's almost impossible to reason with them because they use non-falsifiable claims. With Christians, it's God is good, end of story. He works in mysterious ways. If you ask them, hey, why isn't God doing anything about all the starving people around the world, or all the homeless people around the world, or these insane wars that keep getting worse, or why isn't he doing anything about climate change? Why isn't he doing anything about workers who are basically wage slaves? Why isn't God doing anything about all the bad shit that's happening around the world? Their response would be, well, God works in mysterious ways. I can't question God and his plans and what he has working out. So if God's okay with millions of people dying in unnecessary wars, he has a plan. God works in mysterious ways. If God's okay with people unnecessarily starving and being homeless, it's okay. I'm cool with it because God works in mysterious ways. He has a plan for that. Like, okay, so there's absolutely, God is good, and there's absolutely nothing that anybody can say to change your mind on that, because you're always, if he does a miracle, if he does good things, like if he cures some disease for somebody, oh my God, God is so great, he's so good. If he's letting Bush kill 1 million people in Iraq, God is still good. He just works in mysterious ways, and maybe there was a reason why 1 million people had to die in Iraq. Like, that's this type of mental gymnastics and rationalization you see in religious fundamentalists. The same is true with the people who still call Barack Obama a good president. They say, hey man, he maybe didn't get everything I wanted, but he still was fighting for the right things, and he still was looking out for the people, and he was still doing everything he can to make people's lives better. Barack Obama works in mysterious ways. So even though his actions and policies that he's doing as president are the exact opposite of what I want the president to do, and what I think is best, and what I think would qualify someone to be a good president, I'm still going to call him a good president because Barack Obama works in mysterious ways, yo. Well, now, a lot of those people support Bernie Sanders. A lot of those very same people see Bernie Sanders and say, I can get behind that. He's really fighting for the policies that I like, $15 minimum wage, Medicare for all, ending the wars, aggressively fighting climate change. Those are all things I like, so I'm going to get behind Bernie Sanders. Now, they're going to have to try to reconcile that with the fact that Barack Obama, the person that they call a good president and a good politician, and somebody who's on their side fighting for them and fighting for their priorities, they're going to have to reconcile with the fact that Barack Obama is now out publicly saying he's going to do everything in his power to stop Bernie Sanders. Make sense? Make that make sense for me. How could Barack Obama be fighting for all your policy priorities if he's actively trying to defend the status quo and defend establishment candidates so that they can win, and he's actively trying to fuck over the person who you decide is representing your values in this primary? I hope Barack Obama does this. I hope he comes out and gives speeches against Bernie Sanders every goddamn week, because hopefully that will break the spell and it will rip the mask off of Barack Obama, and people see him for what he really is, a narcissistic, self-absorbed neoliberal who's concerned about nothing more than defending his shitty legacy and defending the status quo and business as usual and the political establishment and elites in the United States. Yes, the DNC email leaks, the Podesta email leaks, showed the corrupt actions that the DNC and the Clinton campaign did to rig the primary, specifically in the 2016 election. But it showed more than that. It showed that there's a culture. It showed that this is accepted. This is best practices in the Democratic Party. Undermine progressives, undermine leftists at every turn, so that we could only have corporatist, centrist, establishment Democrats in the party, especially running as a Democratic nominee for president. What we learned showed exactly how these people operate, and we know for a fact that nothing has changed. The same people are running the party, the same political operatives, the same consultants, the same people in media still have their jobs. And their open vitriol and disdain for leftist and progressive policies and progressive candidates and politicians is stronger than ever. My point is, what we learned in 2016, what we saw in 2016 was, by accident, the opposing team showed us their entire playbook. And we need to assume that they're doing those very same things and nothing has changed, because that's exactly what it looks like, and that's exactly what's happening. And like Crystal Ball said in her monologue, this is going to be the fight of our life. It hasn't started yet. All of the smears in the media, all the dismissal of Bernie Sanders and scoffing at Medicare for All and smearing Tulsi Gabbard for being anti-war, calling her an Assad apologist. This is just the beginning. When the votes start coming in and it's becoming incredibly clear that Bernie Sanders is about to run away with this thing, they're going to do everything in their power, even from before then, probably from Iowa. They're already doing everything in their power to make sure Bernie Sanders doesn't win. And like I spent a good part of this video talking about, these people, Barack Obama and his cabal, they've already been proven to be unethical, dirty, lying cheats. And this statement from Barack Obama is a threat that they're going to use the same playbook of election interference and election fraud that they used in 2016 to stop Bernie Sanders.